Under surveillance this morning, we're counting down to Liberation Day.
The tariffs will be far more generous than those countries were to us, meaning they will be kinder than those countries were to the United States of America. You'd start with all countries, so let's see what happens. There are many countries. I haven't heard a rumor about 15 countries, 10 or 15.
So you're starting with all countries?
Essentially, all of the countries that we're talking about would be talking about all countries. It's not a cutoff.
So here's the latest this morning. President Donald Trump planning to start his reciprocal tariff push on all countries, tempering hopes that the initial scope could be limited on Wednesday. Henrietta, Treyz of Veda Partners joins us right now for more. Henrietta, let's start with the trillion-dollar question. What happens on April 2nd?
April 2nd at midnight, lots of tariffs start going on. So it's going to be a really long day. We'll obviously get the reports from USTR, Commerce, and Treasury on the 1st. I think there's going to be a lot of advance warning provided by those documents. You know, we have trade agreements with 20 different countries. And I think when the president says we're going to tariff everybody that we're talking about, he means those 20 countries. So I'm expecting to pull out of the phase one China deal or call them out in violation of the deal, which means that all the Section 301 tariffs covering over $350 billion worth of goods from China will go up. I think we're going to see new tariff investigations start on India, for example, pharmaceuticals. I think there's going to be new tariffs under Section 232 and IEEPA across the auto sector. I'm very wary about auto parts. I think that'll be sort of a secondary event that happens in a couple months' time should any of the nations like the EU not come to the negotiating table sufficiently. It takes a long time to get through. There's a lot coming.
Henrietta, what do we see that can happen almost immediately when it comes to IEEPA or 338? Is that going to specific countries or is that going to industries?
IEEPA is specific countries and industries, although Section 232, the national security justification, is really where a lot of the sector-specific items go. Lumber, copper, dairy, things along those lines would be a Section 232 tariff. My biggest concern with any rationale that's not IEEPA or even 338 is that there's no time horizon to take them off. The Section 232 tariffs on steel and aluminum have been in effect for almost 8 years. The Section 301 tariffs against China have been in effect for almost 8 years. So once those tariffs come on with a rationale, like the auto investigation that they completed during Trump's first term, those tariffs don't come off. So those are the most pernicious. The IEEPA pieces on Canada and Mexico, for example, theoretically can come off in 3 to 6 months. The others have very serious staying power.
Henrietta, when it comes to how the president is approaching Wednesday, he said we're going to start with all countries. Is that where he's going to end?
That's a fair question. I think we start with about the 20 countries that we have trade agreements with. That's what the agencies have been tasked with doing. But I see the potential for expansion before we see any pullback. So, for example, there's no investigation into India. I mentioned that at the outset. I think we have a lot of issues with India, from trade in pharmaceuticals, generic drugs, the trade in services deficit. Those are all sort of institutional issues that we know USTR Greer had during Trump's first term. And I would expect to see a really long drag to any approach to India. So I think a lot more are going to come on in the next 4 years of Trump's term than necessarily come off. Although Canada and Mexico should be excluded, especially USMCA compliant pieces, that trade deal needs to be re-agreed to by next summer.